What it do, y'all? We back again with unique looks at the 12th house. Whenever I think of this house, I just think of all encompassing, everything, the potential of everything, what some people may call God, just life itself. This house, I like to say, is the most mutable house of all because its mutability can be seen in the other mutable houses. For example, well, let me say this. I think the energy signature and concept of mutability comes from this. So when I say that you can find the mutability in other mutable signs, I hope you can, get what I'm saying when the mutability of that house comes from this house. So for example, the third house, different ways of communication, different thoughts, the different components within an environment. The sixth house, day-to-day routines and the manifestations that can come out of the 12th house, or manifestations that can come out of day-to-day. Every day's a new day. The ninth house, the higher learning, travel, seeing different things. I think the mutable aspects of the mutable houses come from the 12th house because I believe that the 12th house is life itself. So all the other houses in the, 1 through 11, I think those come out of the 12th house. A lot of people say that the 12th house or Pisces is the first sign. And, you can look at it that way, the first and last, or you can even look at it as this house encompasses all the other houses. So it's not really the first or last, it's just the backdrop of all the other houses. In the first house, I mentioned a quote, eyes are the window to the soul. So simply you could just tie it to, if the face and the eyes are the first house, behind that is the soul or the 12th house. So behind the first house is the 12th house. The eyes are the window to the soul. And the second quote is behind the veil, and it's basically the same thing. Behind the veil, you can look at the veil as physicality, and behind the veil is, true authenticity or the true essence of something. A 12th house can represent different dimensions, but instead of focusing on, something that's outside the planet, I want to focus on in the planet. If you think about life in the ocean, you could kind of look at that as different dimensions, because if you live in the ocean, you have a different vessel makeup to sustain in that life. Think of fish, jellyfish, even certain mammals that live in the ocean. Their genetic makeup and vessel makeup is built for a different dimension than what it would be on land. And same with birds, like they have a different vessel equipped for the environment that they're in. Yeah, birds are land animals, but at the same time, they spend majority of their migration and their movement in the air. I think the 12th house is the creativity of life versus I think the 12th house is creativity, but the creativity of life itself. If we look at the 5th house, creativity, you could say the same thing, but it's creativity that can be expressed outwards. And the 12th house creativity is just like the potential of creativity, or the creativity of potential. It's the creativity you don't see. Like, how a lot of people ask certain questions that are still unanswered, like how does a spirit go into a body, or just certain mystical questions that aren't answered yet. Um, I want to bring up the element carbon. Now, if you know anything about carbon, they say that carbon is the element or chemical of life. Carbon can be found in basically anything: the air, atmosphere, plants, algae, fish, mammals. Carbon, but I believe carbon is on the axis of 12 and 6th house, because in the 6th house, it's the manifestations that come out of the 12th. So I believe that the element carbon is shared between shared between both. This house sextiles Earth houses. It sextiles the 10th house in Capricorn, and it sextiles Taurus in the 2nd house. And it's always going to be on the axis of the 6th house. And the way I see this is, if you have potential and something that isn't manifested, you know, I believe that the purpose of potential is to be manifested. So if you look at the 10th house, I mean, when it comes to energy like this, it's so many manifestations and so many forms. Like, you could just look at it as, if you have 12th house, the potential, these earth houses are the many different ways that it can manifest. On the flip side to this, these earth houses are how you can somehow manipulate this energy, because this energy is like both ways. If you think of the Pisces representation as two fish going in the opposite direction, so it's kind of like going back again to why this is the most mutable house, because logic can't tie this energy down. You can't really understand this energy with logic. This is the square to the 3rd house. This is the opposition or axis to 6th house. And interesting enough, when it comes to the square to the 9th house, one thing I noticed, that a lot of squares that have a lot of similar energy signatures, they kind of work well together. Like the 9th and the 12th, and the 3rd and the 6th. Again, there's really not much I can really say. I could speak about the 12th house all day, but there's really, when I think of the 12th house, I just think of everything. Anything you can think of, anything you can imagine. Imagination is definitely a heavy concept of the 12th house, but it's just anything you could think of, anything you can feel, anything that's unknown, because this is, if the 11th house is the unknown, this is past the unknown. This is like, you don't know what you don't know, and these things are always being manifested. That's why we get to the 1st house. The 1st house is newness, so there's always new energies being manifested every day. But yeah, that's really what I was trying to get across, is that the 12th house is it's a life itself, and all the other houses are manifested out of the 12th house, and then the conclusion to these houses always go back to the 12th house. So it's not really the beginning and end, it's just the all. And that has been the house series, and I appreciate you for listening.